We've all been in that situation where we're trying to build our next software product and we are stuck on determining what type of a backend should we use for the service that we're building. And this is a question that gets asked to me a lot, and a lot of people specifically ask me, hey Hussein, do you have any recommendations for what type of a backend solution should I use for my product? Or is Firebase a good system to use for whatever thing that I'm building? So what I wanted to do in this video was actually discuss with you guys some of the pros and cons of Firebase in my opinion, and where Firebase is a solid option and where it isn't. And I'll also kind of discuss with you guys some alternatives to Firebase, and then what are some of the pros and cons for that. So the first thing that I want to talk about Firebase is actually creating a list of what are some of the advantages of Firebase, and then also listing down some of the disadvantages. The first advantage of Firebase is that it gives us the ability to develop our applications very fast and get our prototypes or minimum viable products to market quickly. And this is especially true when it comes to teams which are very small, or if you're a solo developer, then I highly recommend that you take a look at a solution like Firebase, or maybe an open source one like Strappy or Supabase, because they're going to really simplify your life as a developer and make it very easy for you to ship a product to market. And at the end of the day, I really want to stress this out, that the end users really don't care about what type of a tech stack you're using when you're developing your application. What they care about is how seamless their experience is. So for us as developers, it's more important to put focus on where things actually matter than trying to reinvent the wheel. Another big advantage of Firebase is that it is an all-in-one platform. So what do I mean by all-in-one platform? Well, basically what this means is that if you want to put a database within your application, Firebase gives you Cloud Firestore. You want to put authentication into it, there's the authentication side of Firebase. There are extensions which allow you to extend the capabilities of Firebase. If you want to store data, Firebase allows you to store objects on cloud storage. And then if you release your application, you have Crashlytics to monitor like the crash logs for your application. You can monitor the performance using the performance monitoring tab. And then you have Google Analytics baked in as well. And then besides this, you can perform A/B testing, you can do remote configs, you can deploy machine learning models, or you can use the existing ones that Google gives you. So this is another excellent thing that Firebase kind of gives us, and really decreases the complexity when it comes to actually building backend solutions by yourself. So let's just say if you were somebody that was building a backend solution by yourself, then you would have to figure out, so what am I going to do if I want to implement authentication within my application? For that, either you could implement something like Nextauth if you're using Next, or if that's not the case, you can also use a solution like Clerk, which is going to give you authentication and user management. But this is going to be a layer on top of whatever your existing backend is, and it's going to obviously make things more complicated than whatever Firebase gives you out of the box. So for this reason, I think that Firebase is an excellent solution for leaner teams and people with less experience, because it really simplifies some of the main pain points when it comes to actually building products. Then another great advantage of Firebase is that it has awesome client-side SDKs. So it becomes very easy for you to actually integrate Firebase services into your front-end applications using these awesome SDKs. And I believe that almost for all of the major frameworks that are out there, Firebase does have SDKs that support them, and it's very easy for you to implement Firebase within the project that you're building in whatever tech stack that you're using. And then besides this, another advantage that I really feel like Firebase has an edge over is that it really gives you a free generous plan. So I'm not going to get into the cost structure of how painful it can be to actually determine your compute costs if you get out of the free plan and go on to pay as you go. But Firebase does give you a generous free plan, and I believe this could be an excellent thing if you're building a side project, or if you're building a product that you just want to get to the market and actually see if it sticks to the wall or not. So these are some of the advantages of Firebase. So let's talk about some of the disadvantages of Firebase, in my opinion. So the number one disadvantage, in my opinion, is going to be that Firebase is closed source. So if it comes to actually you taking a look at what's running under the hood, or you want to extend the functionality of the platform, then it can be extended, but in very limited ways. You can either use Cloud Functions or some other variations of that to extend the actual functionality of your platform, but it's very difficult to actually extensively modify the Firebase platform to actually fit the needs of whatever product that you're building. Then another issue that I think with Firebase is that it has a very cumbersome process So it's very difficult for you if you're a Firebase user to actually determine how much the bill for your application is going to be. And also, I do not know of a way in which you can set up a limit to how much you're going to be spending for your Firebase projects. You can actually set up triggers to alert you when you exceed a certain spending threshold, but there's no way to actually limit your services or actually cut off your service if you go above, let's just say, whatever you're spending target is. So that could be a very difficult thing to do with Firebase, and the actual cost structure is not very transparent. So it can be very difficult for you to determine as a developer how much it is going to cost you to actually run your backend infrastructure. It's also very difficult to create complex queries with Firebase. I know Cloud Firestore over the years has gotten very good with it, but to this day, I know that there are some things that SQL can just do a lot better than Cloud Firestore. And just by the nature of Cloud Firestore being NoSQL, it can be very difficult to perform complex queries on your data and get results from it. And then the last disadvantage is that is the biggest pain point when it comes to Firebase is that you have vendor lock-in if you are using Firebase. Because Firebase runs on proprietary technology that we do not have access to, let's just say, such as Cloud Firestore, then if you build an application using Firebase and someday you want to migrate over from Firebase to, let's just say, another backend solution, then it's going to be very painful for you to migrate from, let's just say, Firebase to another solution. Yes, solutions exist out there that allow you to actually get your data from Firebase and migrate it into them, but still it's going to be a cumbersome process and it's not going to be easy. So now that we've actually talked about the advantages and disadvantages of Firebase, I actually want to talk about when you should consider Firebase as a viable option for the project that you're building. So if you're a team that has less experience, whether you're an individual developer or just as a team as a whole, then I recommend that you take a look at Firebase. If you're somebody that's building an application that is not very complicated or not very reliant on complex data or data that has a lot of relations, then Firebase is also a good solution for you. So if your data is less relation dependent, and then finally, if you want a fast development cycle, then I recommend that you also take a look at Firebase. But let's just say that you're in the same bucket where you don't have a lot of experience doing backend development. Maybe you're a newer developer and you don't have that experience under your belt, but you still have data that is less reliant on relations and you want a fast development cycle, but you're not comfortable with maybe the vendor lock-in or Firebase, or maybe the cumbersome cost estimation of how much Firebase is going to cost you, or the closed source nature of Firebase, then an excellent alternative to Firebase is Supabase. Even though it doesn't give all of the features that Firebase gives us, all of the major features that we actually use Firebase for, Supabase also gives it to us, and it's also open source and it uses non-proprietary solutions such as PostgreSQL for a database. So if ever in the future you want to migrate over from, let's just say, Supabase to another backend solution, then it's going to be much easier than Firebase. So Supabase does give us a database, it does give us authentication, we can also use storage for it. It also has edge functions similar to Firebase, so if you want to run some specific code, then that's also possible. And another cool feature that Supabase has but Firebase doesn't is a vector database, which you can use for your vector embeddings if you're into the world of machine learning and LLMs and things like that. So Supabase is an excellent option regardless of Firebase. And one thing that I really admire Supabase for is that they have transparent pricing. So they do have a generous free tier similar to Firebase, but then after that you can just opt in for plans that have a fixed price, and this really makes it easy for you to determine the actual cost of running your backend infrastructure for whatever product you're building. And then just because of the open source nature of Supabase, if you're somebody that's more experienced and knows a bit more about DevOps, then you can also deploy Supabase on some other platform as a service, let's just say like Railway or Zebra or DigitalOcean, or you can also just spin up an EC2 instance on AWS or maybe your own virtual machine and run Supabase off of there as well. So it caters to both people that are looking for a fully managed backend solution or people that maybe want to take their data and be in control of them and run it on their own infrastructure. And then let's just say that you take a look at Firebase and you've taken a look at Supabase, but you're still not interested in them, and you're a bit more experienced than the average developer. You have a little bit of backend experience under your belt. You understand what backend development means, but you're looking for an open source solution that maybe is based upon a SQL database because the data that you have is very dependent upon relations, and you are not into the whole vendor lock-in situation. Then what I would recommend is that you take a look at Strapi. Strapi is an excellent headless CMS system. What it basically allows you to do is have a backend in which you can use a visual builder to define your data structures, and then it exposes REST API or a GraphQL API to you, which you can use to interact with your data. But this is not where Strapi ends. Strapi also has a lot of other powerful features that you come to expect from your backend infrastructure, such as the ability to have authentication, the ability to have roles and permissions. And then if you want to extend the functionality of Strapi, you can do it in two ways. Either you can write custom code, because Strapi is fully customizable because of the open source nature of Strapi, and you can customize it endlessly to your needs. Or you can actually take a look at Strapi Market, where there are a bunch of different plugins for a bunch of use cases that you might have when you develop your backend applications. If you want to use Mailgun for sending transactional emails, there are plugins for that. If you want to store your data on IPFS, there's that. And if you want to use some kind of another translate plugin and a whole bunch of other things, then you have all of that as well. So Strapi is an excellent solution. I wouldn't recommend Strapi for beginner developers. I think Strapi really shines where you are somebody who has a bit more experience, or a team that has a bit more experience, but you necessarily do not want to reinvent the wheel from scratch. What you want to do is actually take a pre-existing solution that's open source, that relies on open source technologies, and then extend it wherever you feel like there's a need to implement custom functionality, ultimately saving you time and actually improving the developer experience across your team and making it much easier for you to ship your product to end users. And then same as Supabase, Strapi also offers a cloud fully managed service, which you can use to actually deploy the Strapi instance and then have Strapi manage the deployment for you. And if that is something that you do not fancy, then you can also self-host Strapi on a platform as a service platform like Railway, Zebra, or DigitalOcean. Or if you're somebody that doesn't have that experience or doesn't want to delve into the world of deploying their own infrastructure, then Strapi can handle everything for you. So this is why I believe that these could be excellent solutions for developers that actually do not have a lot of experience, or maybe have a lot of experience but want to cut down on their development time and costs. And I think these three solutions could be the sweet spot between complexity, cost, and flexibility that they give you. So in terms of complexity, I'll give Strapi medium complexity, and the cost could be relatively lower as compared to Firebase, but the flexibility with this is much more than even with Supabase or Firebase. While Supabase and Firebase, the complexity with them would be very little, but at the same time, you're giving up on the flexibility. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think about these type of videos. If you guys are interested in knowing what products I use to deploy my applications in a day-to-day basis, then leave a comment down below, and I'll definitely try to make a video on that. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.